with Judge Wilson to the other ALJs and the staff and the board. And, you know, I don't think I really can go any further than that right now. I don't think the work product is very good. That is my opinion. But I'm only one on the board, and pretty soon I'm not going to be on the board. So it's just, that's my opinion right now.
What do you get paid over for your salary?
My salary is right around, I think it's $96,500, I believe. It's been at the same level for 6 years now. When I first went on the board in 2000, I think it was 2002, I started talking to the other board members, and, you know, we were way, way below what the ALJs were. And so I said something to some legislators at that time, and because the budget, the PERB budget was a one-line item in the state budget. And that one line item covers everything, salaries and operating expenses and everything. Well, the legislature for a very long time just forgot to look at the board salaries. You know, it says in here in chapter 20 that let's see, members of the board and employees of the board shall be, okay, that's actually, let's see. It basically says that the legislature sets our salary, okay? Well, they hadn't bothered to look at it for about 15 years. So I think it was.
You're thinking that salary's not enough?
No. I'm not saying that. I'm saying when I first started there, we board members were being paid $25,000 to $30,000 less than our ALJs who we supervised. So I went to Cynthia Eisenhower at the time, who was Governor Vilsack's Department of Management person, and she proceeded to conduct a study that took, you know, until the following year of all the states around the Midwest that have similar agencies to ours, and it was in fact, we were anywhere from 25 to 35,000 lower than anybody else around. So Governor Vilsack made an adjustment of the salaries for the board members at that time.
Now, how did he do that? I thought you said the legislature set your salaries.
He, well, let's see. I gotta try to figure that out, Senator. I don't know. I don't know. He must have talked to the leaders at the time or something. There was a determination that, and again, it was all public and open. Ms. Eisenhower went through a very public process of studying the surrounding states, and I don't know whether it wasn't an executive order, but somehow our salaries were raised at that time. And they've basically been there ever since, except for a couple of cost of living raises. And you know, I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining. I think the other two board members that joined in 2012, their salaries were set quite a bit lower than the previous board members, and I talked to both of them, and I talked to the governor's office at least 3 times about that, and saying it's not right. They should be where the former board members were, you know, and they're not. They're like 17,000 below where the other board members were.
So there's a range. In other words, the current board members, they don't get X dollars. There's a range apparently.
Well, a few years ago or 5 years ago, I don't remember when, we were put on executive salary schedule 4. That's how it happened. We were put on the executive salary schedule 4, and that's when Governor Vilsack paid us in that at the range we're at now.
I want to get back before my time runs out here. On your complaining or not complaining, do you have any actual evidence that you were complaining about the situation, or that the situation even happened? Are there emails between you and the governor's office, or have you got letters, or is there anything tangible that you could give us?
No, there were no letters. It was all by telephone and in person on that process.
You have no evidence evidence at all except
The evidence I
your
have,
word versus somebody else?
well, no, the evidence I have is the other board members were involved in those discussions, and, you know, you can talk to them. Everybody on our staff was involved in conversations about it and how irregular it was to be asked to do this, and you know, so that's the only evidence I can give you is that because they were very careful not to have an email trail or do any of that, you know.
But your staff, how many people?
Well, there's only you're talking about 4 administrative law judges, and then Mr. Wilson was, and 2 secretaries and the 3 board members.
They were all involved in the conversations with Mr. Point, is that right?
No, the 3 board members were.
Just the 3 board members?
Yes.
But all 3 of them were?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So Jamie Van Fossen and Janelle Niebuhr and I were involved in those conversations. Yes. And, you know, we had conversations back at the shop, again, because we are so small. This is very impactful on a very small agency, and it was very irregular in what was going on. And again, looking back, hindsight's 20/20. I wish we had made a different decision and suffered the consequences, whatever they were.
Do the other 2 board members agree with you that there was a threat to your budgeting, or do you know?
Yeah, I'm not going to speak for them, but yes, I can say yes, they both heard that too, because the 3 of us did talk about that.
So if we asked them, they would all tell us the same thing.
I'm not gonna say what they will say. You know, I don't know. I just know that all 3 of us talked about it. All 3 of us heard the same things, and all 3 of us felt that there was that threat.
Were all 3 of you involved in all the meetings at the governor's office?
Let's see. I think there was one meeting where just Jamie Van Fossen and I were involved with the meeting.
But there weren't any meetings where it was just you and the governor's office?
That's correct.
There will always somebody else?
On this particular thing, there was always 2 of us or 3 of us meeting with him, yes.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Couple points I'll make. First off, Iowa's whistleblower law does not currently provide protection for employees who choose to go to the media. So that's something I think that we need to fix, especially when you're blowing a whistle potentially at the very top of the chain of command. And secondly, if you would like those other persons involved with the situation to come before government oversight, you just let me know. We can certainly bring them in and hear their side of the story.
Senator, could I add one thing I forgot to add?
Yes.
And this is for all the senators on the committee. In Chapter 20, the chapter that created the PER Board, Chapter 20.5, Paragraph 2, the board may employ such persons as are necessary for the performance of its functions. Personnel of the board shall be employed pursuant to the provisions of Chapter 8, Subchapter 4. The reason I'm reading that is the board is appointed, but then the board does the hiring. We were, you know, it's not supposed to be the governor doing the hiring. That's all I'm saying. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Senator McCoy. We did get permission to run our meeting over until 1:20. Approximately when you leave, but you have a 1:20. Oh, I thought you said you were done. Okay, I've got Senator McCoy next up.
Thank you. Michelle, if I could go back to you, I want to do a couple of follow-up questions. The first question I have, I want to understand what you said in response to Senator Peterson's question about not being prepared to come in before the committee. Were you surprised when you heard you were unprepared to come before the committee and that the governor's office had intervened and stopped you from coming?
What I saw and heard was that I was unprepared.
Yes.
And yes, I was not very happy about that, frankly.
Yeah.
Because I did, in all honesty, get about 24 hours notice. And so I chose to, and we have a lot going on, and so I did work very late to make sure that I was prepared, because certainly I always want to be as prepared as I can. And so yes, I was surprised.
Okay, thank you. My next question is, you came from Principal Financial Group, is that correct?
That is correct.
And who recruited you?
Mike Carroll.
Okay, and how did you know Mike?
My name was referred to Mike Carroll
By whom?
by Doug Woodley.
Okay,
Doug
Okay.
Woodley and I worked on a number of projects together while we were both employed with the Principal Financial Group. So,
Okay.
I had a number of interviews with Director Carroll.
great. And what is your current position, job title,
My job title is Chief Operating Officer
and your
for
salary?
Human Resources Enterprise. I right around $130,000.
Okay. And I guess my question with respect to coming on board at the state, you interviewed with Mike Carroll. He was recommended by Woodley. What was it your understanding that you would be doing at the state when you visited with them? Was this the position that you were hired for?
I was hired for this position, yes. My understanding was that I would have responsibility for the human resources, the centralized human resources function
Okay.
within the executive branch.
Okay. And your predecessor was,
Jeff Pankman.
yeah, and what happened to him?
Jeff Pankman is currently within my organization. He is managing, he's responsible for the training and development programs. So one of the programs within the human resources organization.
Okay, okay. Is that a lateral move or is that a demotion?
It's not a lateral move.
Okay. So if it's not a lateral move, then it would be a demotion.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. And was that a voluntary demotion?
That was not a voluntary promotion.
Okay, all right. So Director Carroll and Mr. Woodley wanted a new HR arm, and you became the HR arm that they decided to recruit, and I'm clear on that. Tell me about your relationship with Brian Lamb. Did you work closely with Mr. Lamb?
Certainly. There are, I believe, 6 or 7 of us on kind of the management team within the Department of Administrative Services, and we all work fairly closely together. Yes.
Okay.
He served as general counsel, so, and lots of legal issues within human resources, so certainly.
You know, I have a certain degree of sympathy for Mr. Lamb because he left state government about 7 or 8 weeks ago, and since he left, he's been named by the governor, Mr. Woodley, Mr. Carlson, and Lon Anderson is the only person that knew about the hush money for settlement. So I hope at some point he'll get a chance to talk to the committee. Now we know that you had no knowledge of any hush money for settlements either.
I did not.
Okay, okay. So I'm intrigued. Are you familiar with an organization called SHRM?
Yes.
Are you a member?
Frankly, I think my membership expired in January, but I intend to be again, so generally, yes. I just think that I haven't renewed.
So SHRM is like Society of Human Resource
Management.
Management.
That's correct.
So in terms of the hiring process, can you think of any best practices that would allow at-will positions to be hired without job postings or advertising to create the best pool of applicants possible, based upon anything you've ever seen or read in SHRM or best practices in the industry?
Certainly, I would say as best practice, certainly as I think you're probably aware, a posting process, an advertisement process, an application process is certainly a best practice. Can candidates be sourced in other ways? Absolutely.
Yes, and I think that works.
And I would
That
say-
works great if you're a family business and you want to hire the boss's son, or you want to bring in, a cousin of Aunt Loretta that is down on his luck, and you want to stick him in a job and hand it to him. And if you own the business, you ought to have the right to do that. But for a governmental agency, can you think of how that good old boy network might be problematic?
Well, one best practice that I think is definitely worth referencing and mentioning would be referrals.
Oh, absolutely.
A referral program, and you'll see it a lot in best practice, especially in private organizations, that there will be, frankly, referral bonuses, right?
Absolutely.
Where there's been enough studies done that show that your high-performing talent are most likely to refer high-performing talent, and it builds, loyalty within the organization, and so I would say that, a referral process is certainly accepted, and I think even encouraged, and even in both the merit and non-merit hiring process.
And I totally get that point. I'm a huge believer in referral programs and think that's a beneficial practice. But I'm talking about a practice where we listen to Doug Woodley, the Chief Operating Officer, tell the committee that these positions are at will, and he doesn't have to post them, and he's not going to post them. He's going to go out and hire his friends. That's what he told the committee, and there's essentially nothing wrong with that. So from the standpoint of actually going back to the code, I checked it out, and there was nothing in the code that said at will needed to be posted. Tell me about your internal manuals that you give your department heads on best practices and guidelines for hiring as well as terminations. Is it outlined in there that there's a process that should be followed? Because we're going to need to see those manuals.
Certainly for
Yes.
merit covered positions, absolutely. For non-merit covered positions, I will certainly take a look.
Does it differentiate though? In your manual?
Gosh, I don't know that I
most
can comment
recent
without,
copy?
I'd have to go back and look at the documentation.
Okay, well, we definitely need the copy of the EAS manual. Now, if I could change subjects, I'd like to get back to this list of horrible things that you read to the committee about the reasons why these employees were disqualified and ended up on the blacklist for banning them for rehires. I would like to get a copy of the list of things that you read to us for disqualification. That would be very helpful to me, that list that you read aloud.
Sure, and it's really just that. It was a list that I pulled from, frankly, some of the ALJ decisions that I mentioned earlier that were just appeals that went to the the Employment Appeal Board related to exclusion. So it was just a sample that I pulled together based on some inquiries I've received, but I can certainly get you a copy of that.
Yeah, okay. And then I want to talk to you about violence in the workplace and sexual harassment, because that is something that we've had some real disturbing points of personal privilege from Senator Hogue about this year. It's frankly turned my stomach several times when I've heard about what's going on in the workplace. Am I to believe? Am I to understand you to say that we have no process formally for reporting sexual harassment in the workplace?
No, I am sorry if I stated that. We have a process for reporting. How investigations are conducted is what I was attempting to answer, and that varies based. The reporting process is outlined in the, I apologize if I misunderstood or misanswered the question. The reporting process would be outlined in the policy, which I can get you a copy of.
Well, I want to be very clear about this, because this is a huge issue. Sexual harassment, violence in the workplace are very big issues. And you mentioned that for a victim, their first order of recourse would be their supervisor, unless their supervisor was the perpetrator, in which case they have other options.
Again, it depends on the situation. But I will get you a copy of the policy, and perhaps that will help with clarity. But it depends on, it depends on the situation. In most cases, people would go to their direct leader to report complaints happening in the workplace. That's a natural part of what happens in the workplace.
So there was a case of violence in the workplace, and a complaint was filed, and a team of Doug Woodley and Charlie Smithson were responsible for investigating a complaint regarding an EAS employee. Are you familiar with that investigation?